Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday evening Forex breakdown. My name is Gail Mercer, and I'm going to be the presenter today. Now, before we get started, I would like everyone to take just a moment to read over the disclaimer. This is for your protection as well as ours. And basically, anytime you're trading, there is risk involved and you can lose money. So please always keep that in mind and do not trade with money you cannot afford to lose. Now, for those of you that do not know me, my name is Gail Mercer. I'm the founder of Traders Help Desk. I've been trading well over 15 years. I actually started out with a company that programmed indicators for different trading platforms. And the moment that I saw that we could actually track price action minute by minute, I was just totally in love. And I've been trading ever since. Now, I started out with Forex, and I did because I had a day job and I had to trade off hours. So Forex moves 23 hours a day. It was a perfect market for me to trade. Now, in addition to trading, I've also written 4 different books on trading Nadex binary options. I've done one, it's Keeping It Simple Strategies, the New Trader's Guide to Trading Nadex Binary Options and Spread, Trading Nadex Binary Options Using Currencies, and Using Candlestick Patterns. Now, I'm also a speaker at the Wyckoff Volume Conference, Traders World, Traders Expo, and TradeStation user groups. I do specialize in candlestick patterns and support resistance in volume analysis. Now, I do recommend that you visit my website at tradershelpdesk.com to learn more about what I do and the indicators that I use. Of course, if you have any questions at any time, you can always contact me via email at gm@tradershelpdesk.com. Now, before we really get started this evening, I do want to go over the different products that Nadex has, because regardless of whether you're a long-term trader or a day trader or even a scalper, Nadex has a product that is probably right for you to trade. Now, they offer the binaries. I do the Forex binaries. They also offer them on the indices as well as commodities. They also have what they call spreads. Works very similar to a touch bracket, but you can get a call spread for like 2 hours on up to a day. Then they also have what is called touch brackets. In touch brackets, I have fallen in love with because it's just like trading the underlying to me. So a lot of times if I see setup on a higher time frame, I'm going to use the touch bracket. Now, sometimes I will combine the touch brackets with the binaries or with the call spreads because it's a really good setup. And to me, it's just an additional way to make a profit, a potential profit in the market, okay? Now, the first thing that I do to get started for the week, and I typically do this every Sunday night. So what you're seeing me do tonight is my typical Sunday night behavior, okay? The first thing I'm going to look at is market reports, because that's going to affect what we do this trading week. So the first thing that I notice is on the Japanese yen, the markets will be closed because it's a bank holiday, okay? And then tomorrow over in the UK is also a bank holiday. So I typically get up and start trading at 3 o'clock in the morning. So what that tells me is, hey, I can sleep late tomorrow morning because I'm probably not going to get up and try to trade when there's a bank holiday. Now at 1:45 tomorrow, we do have the Bank of Canada governor speaking. I always expand that to see what they're speaking about, okay? In this case, the text of the speech is due to be released. Well, it's due to be released at 1:45, and then the speech is scheduled 15 minutes after that. Now, he will be speaking about the future of Canada's mortgage market, so that can affect the Canadian dollar, okay? I'm not a big trader of the Canadian, but if I was, I would watch out for that. Also, tomorrow evening at 9:30, we have the Aussie retail sales. And then Tuesday at 12:30 in the morning, we have both the cash rate and the RBA rate statement. The euro has a holiday on Wednesday, but notice this is a French bank holiday. That's not going to bother me. I'm still going to get up at 3 o'clock and trade, okay? Just with the elimination of France is not going to impact my trading. Thursday morning, 8:30, we have trade balance on the Canadian. Then we have the Fed Chair Powell speaking. Again, we need to expand that to see what is he speaking about. Now, in this case, he's due to deliver, excuse me, opening remarks at the Federal Reserve System Community Development Research Conference. That one, it may create some volatility, but I would not expect it to create a lot of volatility. It's just the topic of the speech. Then we also have the PPI month over month on the US dollar. And then Thursday night, we have the RBA monetary policy statement. Now, that's one that I would not be trading through on a touch bracket because it could take a good trade and turn it into a bad trade. Then on Friday morning, we have several British pound reports, the GDP month over month, manufacturing production month over month, and then the preliminary GDP quarter over quarter. Also at 8:30 Friday morning, we have the Canadian unemployment change and unemployment rate. Those two do move the Canadian dollar very high volatility report. So watch out for those. And then we have the CPI and core CPI. Both of those are month over month. So when I look at the schedule, typically I tend to trade Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. And looking at this, I can already tell you that's probably what I'm going to be trading this week. Okay. I do think Monday will be a slower day, at least until the U.S. session opens, and then it may still be slow because you have the Japan market closed and you also have the UK market closed. So you're not going to have that normal overlap with London tomorrow. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually go and look at my charts. And I do like using a scanner window. And in this case, you can see that I have the scanner window here. Can you just type in a yes if you can see my scanner window? Okay. Now, the first thing that I do when I bring this up is actually look at the values in here, okay? For example, you can see the British pound yen and the British pound dollar. The stochastics is at 81. That tells me they are overextended, and this would be an overbought status, okay, because it's above 80. Then I also look at the weekly, okay? You see the USD Swiss franc and the USD JPY. USD JPY is at 74. The USD Swiss franc is at 80. So both of these markets are overextended. Both of these markets on the daily are overextended. Now, why does that concern me? Well, number one, I like to see it where if this is overbought, then I also want the RSI and the ADX to be overextended as well. In this case, they're not, okay? So what's the next thing I go to? Well, you can see right here on the weekly chart, the Aussie yen, Aussie dollar, euro yen, euro dollar, they're all trending to the downside, okay? So that tells me currently, if I want to enter those, I'm probably going to be going short, okay? You can also look up at the daily. Again, the same scenario, they're all red across the board. That tells me this is a trending market, okay? That means if I'm going into a trending market, the setup that I want to use would be for price to be at an ATR. So I'm just going to go to the Aussie dollar real quick. And you can see this is moving down as well as this one. Let me stretch that out some. Okay, so you can see that you're moving down here, you're moving down here. You've had 3 bearish bars. We have had a gap this evening. Okay, now the next thing that I look at is, okay, I'm making lower lows on both of these, but the stochastics has not come lower yet. That's one thing I would like to see, the stochastics comes lower. The next thing I'm going to look at is the 6-hour chart. You know, is it time for a retracement? Right now you're getting a bullish bar, okay? And from what I can see, we're probably going to go back to this ATR. And that is the point where I should actually be looking at taking a trade. Okay. Now what I was telling you earlier about markets that are overextended, this is what I'm looking at. Ooh. Let's see. I messed that one up real quick. Let me fix it. Okay. Now I got it back. So in this case, do you see how the stochastics was overextended? The RSI was overextended. The ADX is overextended. This is where this would tell me that if I'm a counter trend trader, I could counter trend that back to the ATR, which is the red plus sign. But in this case, okay, because all of these were overextended, if I'm a trend trader, it tells me, hey, I cannot enter that, but when it comes back to the ATR, then I can trend trade it with anticipation that it would take out this low. Does everybody understand that? So you have a trend trade and you have a counter trend trade. Okay? All right, now let's go and let's see what the Aussie yen is doing. Right now, the Aussie yen, and tonight we have gapped down. Okay, so I think the gap is going to be closed, number one. But the weekly is showing that, hey, more than likely this downtrend is going to continue. Why would you say that? Because you're not overbought, you're not oversold, and you have not come back to test this low at 72.86. The next thing that I look at will be the daily, okay? On the daily, you can see that that stochastics is overextended and we're forming a bullish bar. What happens when you're overextended and you form a bullish bar, okay? Typically, that will turn the stochastics up, and that would tell me, hey, we may get a retracement up, okay? This is where it's important to know what kind of trader you are. Are you a counter trend trader? Well, you might be interested in trading that back up to the ATR. But if you're a trend trader, you're going to wait and let that find a resistance point, and then you're going to trade it. Is it close to finding a area that may resist price? No, because it should either come to 78.22 or even 79.12, okay? When you go down to the 6-hour chart, you can see that here you made a low, okay? We're now lower, but the stochastics is not, okay? So that tells me that more than likely this is going to retrace back up to 78.00 or 78.32. In other words, there are two areas of potential resistance, okay? One is the moving averages, which is right at 78. The other is the ATR at 78.35. Okay, let's go and look at the euro yen. Now, I always start looking at my charts on the weekly because I like doing a multiple time frame approach. When you do it from 6-hour to daily to weekly, you typically will justify your entry, whether it's there or not. But if you're doing it from the weekly, it actually will stop that type of behavior. So in this case, you know, we're not overextended on anything. And as far as I can tell, we're still going to be moving down, okay? If I look down to the euro yen, okay, you can see that we're trying to tick down here. And here, I'm not too worried about this bar right now because we gap down and they're probably going to fill the gap. But I do think we're probably going to come slightly lower than 123.64. But if we do, I need to look at whether there is divergence or not. Then when I go down to the 6-hour chart, we're making new lows, but we're making new lows in the stochastics as well. So yes, we may get a retracement back to 124.50 up to 124.88, 124.90. But when that occurs, I think they're going to find resistance, and then more likely than not, it will continue back down. Any questions on the euro yen? Okay, let's go and look at the euro dollar. And right now, I'm not real concerned about the bar that is developing on the weekly or daily because there's a long time before those bars complete, okay? Now, from what I can see, I would anticipate this weekly chart to actually go up to 1370, okay? It's right at the point of being overextended. And if you go back to this low, which I know was lower, okay, so you have a low here that formed on this bar. We're now lower than that, but the stochastics is not, okay? I would anticipate that the weekly at some point this week will actually retrace, okay? Here you can see that we went to the ATR. They did find resistance. They're now going to test probably either both of these moving averages again. Sometimes they will come back and actually test this ATR again at 1260. And again, you would need to look at what happens in that area, okay? I would think that they would come down closer to 1.1110 before they actually take it up, okay? But this is, if this bar manages to close above this, that's going to be a strong reversal pattern. What does that look like? Well, look to your 6-hour chart. You made a low here, and the very next bar closed above the high of this low here, okay? So this closed above the high here. So typically this will be a bar that goes higher than the other bar. Okay. I would say it would at least come back to 1220, may go even up to test this one at 1260. Okay. Any questions on that? Now, if I was counter trend trading over here, okay, and I'm expecting this to potentially go back up to this ATR, right? That's potentially. Okay. What kind of setup would I want to see for that to occur? Well, first, I want it to flip this ATR, and then I want it to come back and test it. You can see here, this did not hold, okay? So they're going to flip it again, and you have to see, does it hold? If it doesn't hold, then you don't trade it. Or if you're in a trade, then you just exit and wait for a new setup. Does everybody understand that? All right, let's go and look at the British pound yen. Now, the British pound yen, you have a pivot low here, okay, that indicates the next bar potentially will go up, okay? Why? Because this is a strong bullish bar that closed above the high of this bar, and this bar made a low, okay? So that tells me that more likely than not, this will probably go up. But does the daily confirm that? No, it does not. We did have a strong bar here. It's an outside bar, okay? This generally indicates that the next bar will go higher. What's wrong with the picture? What's wrong with the picture is that you're already overextended, okay? Your stochastics is already above 80. That means, okay, fine, it can go up and it can go higher than here. I'm going to wait, okay? I do not want to go into a market that is already overextended, okay? The program that I'm using tonight is multi-charts. Daryl, how do you find support and resistance levels? It's the indicators that I use. I actually use them to identify where the support and resistance levels are. Okay. Now, because I know that this market right here is potentially overbought, I don't even want to look at the 6 hour, okay? Because I need to wait for a retracement to start on the daily before I can even look down to the 6 hour. Does everybody understand that? Okay, let's go and let's look at the British pound yen. In very similar scenario, you see that 3-bar pivot low, okay? So this indicates that this will more than likely actually continue to the bullish side. But when you look at the daily, do you see how that market is right at the 80 level, which indicates a potentially overextended market? That is not a market I want to go into for a long position, okay? Now, if the 6 hour was already overextended, if it was starting to come down and you're a counter trend trader, you could think about taking a counter trend trade. But even that setup is not apparent at the moment. And for, more likely than not with this formation on that weekly chart, more likely than not, this week is going to be an up week for the British pound. Okay, so the short term might be a counter trend trade, but the longer term will potentially be the long position. Okay, now let's go look at the USD CAD. Okay, you see that you're right at an ATR. Okay, and this is a line of resistance to me. It's very hard typically to break through these ATRs, which is why I use them, okay? But are you overextended? No, you're not. You have a bearish bar, but it did not close below the low of this bar. I also don't like this bar because it showed that the moving average was actually supporting price, okay? Now, when I go down to the daily chart, do you see how this is starting to tick up? It looks like these moving averages are holding it up right now. What worries me is this was a bearish bar. And it was an outside bar. This was caused Friday from the non-farm employment change numbers. Okay, so this bar actually here indicates that more likely than not tomorrow will be a down day, and they may come back and test the slow moving average here. And that's what I would be waiting to see for tomorrow. Then when you go down to the 6 hour, do you see how they just flipped this ATR from blue to red? And you're starting to form this bearish bar. Again, that would confirm what this bar is telling me, in that potentially we could go down tomorrow on the USD CAD. Then on the USD Swiss franc, you can see that we're almost at the point of being overextended, okay? I mean, we're just right on the line there of being overextended. This is a bearish bar because it is a solid candlestick, but it did not close beneath the low of this bar. So this is what we would call a ghost pivot. I don't think that in itself is going to be strong enough to turn this stochastics here. Then when I go down and I look at the daily chart, do you see how it pulled back to the ATR on one bar here? Now this bar, if it continues to be bullish, and there is a long time between now and tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock, okay, anything could happen to this bar, but if it continues to be bullish, that will more than likely turn the stochastics back up. I would anticipate that it would take out this red line here, which is the previous high, okay? And if it does, I would be looking for divergence, okay? Now, is there anything on the 6 hour that would confirm what I'm seeing potentially on the daily? Do you see how you have this line of blue ATRs here? Okay, I would need a bullish bar to develop. And of course, we just started forming this 6 hour price bar. But I would need for that to be bullish for me to say, hey, this may potentially support price. Okay. And if it does, that would be an entry potentially up to at least this white dot at 0.0220. Now, the difference between here is about 60 pips. So in this one, I mean, think of your opportunities. You could use a binary option. You could use a call spread. You could even use a touch bracket on that one, okay? Because you potentially will be going in the same direction as what your weekly and your daily is, okay? Now let's go and look at the USD JPY. And then the USD JPY, you can see that it has been overbought, okay? And you had a bearish bar develop on the weekly chart. That means that more likely than not, it's going to go down. And it has so far for 3 bars. Does that mean it will continue? Not if you're looking at the daily, because the daily at the moment is oversold. When it is oversold, it needs to find an area that will potentially act as resistance. Now, that could come off of this moving average, or it could come off of this ATR. I think it will either be at the moving average, which is 111.50, on up to 112. That's where I would be looking at it to find potential resistance. And then this could be potentially a trend trade to the downside, which is also confirmed on your weekly. Does your 6 hour confirm this move? No, because right now you are potentially overextended. So that means that you have to, again, the 6 hour wants to find an area that is going to resist price, okay? I would think that it would go up to the moving averages right around 111.50, okay? That's where you see all of your moving averages in your ATR, and then I would come back and look at this. Does everybody understand this? Right now, if you enter and you're overextended, that's usually a bad indication, okay? Because you're going to take some heat depending on what kind of time frame you are on. If you want a 2 hour, you could potentially lose if you're short because your higher time frames are overextended. Does everybody understand that? Now, again, I don't think we're going to get a lot of movement overnight because, again, Japan is closed. The UK is closed tomorrow. I'm going to sit back and look at this probably tomorrow afternoon to say, hey, are any of these setups potentially going to play out? Right now, I'm not so sure because you don't have the Asia session really opening tonight. You don't have the UK session opening, okay? I want to see what they do when they come into the markets. Any questions? Last week we had some really good moves, and the first part of this week's probably going to be a little bit slow. Okay, I hope everyone enjoyed the presentation tonight. I would suggest that you visit my website, and I'm going to put it up for you. It's www.tradershelpdesk.com. Okay. Again, you can email me at gm@tradershelpdesk.com, or you can call me at 336-263-0122. And based on your time frames, 1 week, daily, 6 hours, can you use this for 1 to 4 hour positions? You certainly can. I do. So, and when I do that, I just go down, for example, down to 1 hour just to make sure that it's moving. The price bar is forming in my direction. For example, let's say I'm going long on something, okay? Then I'm going to check my 60-minute, okay? And I'm checking primarily 2 things. Is the candlestick going in my favor? If I'm long, then I want a bullish candlestick. But also to make sure that you're not overextended on that stochastics or the RSI. Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad you're finding them helpful. You're showing the weekly, daily, 6 hour charts. Are you analyzing them to trade shorter term trades like 5-minute or 2 1 hour trades? The 5-minute setup, Sam, is very similar. Okay, I'm just using a 15, 5, and a 1. I did a video on my blog on that today. My 2 hour trades, I generally will use a 60, a 30, and a 15, but I also want to make sure that there is not something going on a higher time frame that I don't know about, okay? Because let's say that your daily is, let's say it's at 85 on the stochastics, and it's at 54 on the RSI, and it's at 80 on the ADX. Okay, I don't want to trade that market on them lower time frames, not unless I'm counter trend trading them. I'm going to wait for that counter trend trade to come in, if that makes any sense to you. Okay. Did I do the GBP US dollar? Yes, I did, William. And they'll send out the video as soon as this is over, and you can review it on the video. Any other questions? Okay, if there's no other questions, I do hope all of you have a wonderful evening and a wonderful trading week this week. Again, if you have any questions or you would like to email me, just email me or give me a call. You might have to leave a voicemail, but I will get back with you, okay?